As of April 2018, 11 television shows and 19 films have been produced in a 10-year period, all taking place in the same fictional universe, each installment telling parts of a larger story, all to be resolved in a single film that will then kick off the next era, potentially the next generation of films. It is unprecedented. How did we get here? Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In 1989, Warner Brothers and DC Comics' Batman re-established the credibility for comics-inspired properties at the box office after the genre had experienced a slow decline from its previous peak, 1978's Superman and 1980's Superman 2. After Superman 3 in 1983, things were getting shaky, and by Superman 4 in 1987, the genre was almost abandoned. Batman proved that comics were still a potential source for not only huge box office returns, but all-encompassing mainstream brand power across the retail sales environment. Posters, lunchboxes, t-shirts, and action figures made by a toy company called Toy Biz. Marvel released Swamp Thing in 1982, Red Sonja in 1985, and Howard the Duck in 1986. Through 1989, their best productions were all on TV. Hulk, Captain America, Spider-Man, Hulk, then after that, some Hulk. The closest they had come to portraying the larger Marvel universe of superheroes were appearances by Daredevil and Thor on those same Hulk TV shows, hoping for spin-offs that never materialized. Also in 1989, New World Pictures' production of Marvel's The Punisher, starring Dolph Lundgren, went directly to VHS. But more importantly, Marvel Entertainment Group, which consisted of Marvel Comics Group and their film, television, and animation wing Marvel Productions, were split in half by then-owner New World Entertainment, with Marvel Comics being sold to Andrews Group. Andrews Group was a private holding company owned by McAndrews and Forbes, a private holding company owned by Ronald Perlman. Other Ronald Perlman. Marvel Productions, the film, television, and animation wing of Marvel Entertainment, was retained by New World and merged into their own existing film, television, and animation business. And then, later in 1989, the Andrews Group, owned by Ronald Perlman, bought the rest of New World Entertainment as well. He was going to leave part of New World for the next collector, but he couldn't help himself. He's a completist. The following year, in 1990, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hit theaters in an absolute tidal wave of global pop culture fanaticism. Marvel countered with Captain America starring Ned Beatty that wouldn't actually be released for another 2 years, and even then it went direct to VHS. More importantly, Isaac Perlmutter purchased a toy company called Toy Biz, who were producing action figures based on a license from Marvel. In 1991, Ronald Perlman took Marvel Entertainment Group public because comic book properties were hot, and he speculated were only going to get hotter. Let's offer up some stock. There's a lot of little personality I was trying to put into there. Let's offer up some stock and raise some cash. Let's offer up some stock and raise some cash. Let's offer up some cash and raise some cash. Stock, raise cash. Stock, raise cash. In 1991, Ronald Perlman took Marvel Entertainment Group public because comic book properties were hot and, he speculated, only going to get hotter. Let's offer up some stock and raise some cash. Marvel owned some of the hottest comic book characters and employed some of the hottest creators. Spider-Man, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, New Mutants, The Punisher, Guardians of the Galaxy, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson, Jim Valentino, Mark Silvestri, Whilce Portacio. What could possibly go wrong? After Batman and the Ninja Turtles' success, new eyes were looking at comics in a different way. Comic books themselves were now being viewed for their investment potential. You, me, more people than ever were buying comics, and everyone was buying multiple copies of all the books to put away for their absolutely certain, guaranteed future value. Comic publishers rode that wave of speculative investment, and Marvel especially took advantage of their hot artists and hot characters printing so many copies that it should have been obvious to everyone involved that it was unsustainable. In 1992, on the strength of all that financial leverage, McFarlane, Liefeld, Lee, Silvestri, Valentino, Portacio, and Larson left Marvel to set up their own imprint called Image Comics. Marvel had to find a way to make up for the impending, inevitable crash of all their biggest and best properties. In 1993, Marvel purchased 46% of the stock in a toy company called Toy Biz, who were already producing licensed Marvel action figures. But it was no ordinary stock purchase. As part of the deal, Toy Biz would get an exclusive, perpetual, royalty-free license to produce Marvel action figures in exchange for Marvel receiving 46% of Toy Biz stock. Marvel and Toy Biz would essentially be business bros, reducing the costs and increasing the benefits for both. Staff from both companies were shuffled around with, most notably, prolific toy designer and successful business person himself, Avi Arad, who had been working for Toy Biz, being named president and CEO of Marvel Films and given a 10% stake in ownership. 3 years later, in 1996, struggling from loan debt accumulated by Perlman while trying to expand Marvel's reach, the loss of all the Image founders, and the collapse of the speculator market, Marvel Entertainment Group filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. And then, 1997, the darkest year for comics at the box office. Batman and Robin, Spawn, and Steel all at the same time. But when you're at the bottom, the only way to go is up to the top of the mountain, or in this case, Volcano, another movie released in 1997, which I still haven't seen. Please don't spoil it for me. Volcano was executive produced by Lauren Schuler Donner, business partner and spouse of Richard Donner, who, by the way, directed Superman back in 1978. But even more important than that, Lauren had an assistant on that Volcano movie named Kevin Feige. Meanwhile, in 1998, after 2 years of legal disputes, Avi Arad and Ike Perlmutter of Toy Biz were able to wrest ownership of Marvel and Toy Biz away from Ron Perlman and Andrew's group completely. Clear of bankruptcy, the new Toy Biz Marvel entity was renamed Marvel Enterprises. Marvel Enterprises then reorganized itself into 4 quadrants of business: Marvel Studios, Toy Biz, Marvel Publishing, and Marvel Licensing. In 1998, Marvel Enterprises and New Line Cinema, with Avi Arad as an executive producer, released Blade starring Wesley Snipes. The reputation for comic book movies had been tainted by the all-around poor performance of 1997. Comic book movies were too expensive to make and they just weren't selling enough tickets. Blade, however, earned $131 million against its $45 million production cost and was praised by both fans of the source material and critics. Marvel at the movies was reborn. Assistant to executive producer Lauren Schuler Donner, one of the most successful movie producers of all time, is a pretty great way to learn the business, and Kevin Feige did just that. In 1998, he would serve as her assistant again on You've Got Mail, which I also haven't seen. Please don't spoil the ending. Before graduating to associate producer on 2000's X-Men, working alongside executive producers Richard and Lauren Schuler Donner and Avi Arad. After X-Men, Kevin Feige graduated to an executive producer role of his own with Marvel Studios. From 2002 to 2004, Marvel, Kevin Feige, Avi Arad would see the release of 2 Spider-Man movies, 2 more Blade movies, X2, Daredevil, Hulk, and The Punisher. But as successful as they were, all of these properties were still licensed to other production studios, and Marvel wasn't seeing the gross majority of the profits. In 2005, with their proven track record in their pockets, Marvel Enterprises changed their name to Marvel Entertainment and made a deal with Merrill Lynch for a bank loan to begin their own film production. It was time to take control of the movie-making machines. Marvel received $525 million against the rights to 10 Marvel properties. Marvel had to produce a maximum of 10 movies over an 8-year period. If they failed to be profitable films, if they were not able to repay the bank would own Captain America, The Avengers, Nick Fury, Black Panther, Ant-Man, Cloak and Dagger, Doctor Strange, Hawkeye, Power Pack, and Shang-Chi. That's right, Power Pack and Shang-Chi. As Batman Begins, Fantastic Four, and Elektra were all hitting theaters, Marvel was preparing to take the first step toward their ultimate goal of a shared universe and an Avengers movie. Marvel wanted to kick off their new movie production studio with a character that had never been featured in a live-action film before. As fate would have it, they were able to reacquire the rights to Iron Man after New Line Cinema, a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, the company that owns DC Comics, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Justice League, let their option expire and the rights reverted to Marvel. Since it wasn't part of the original deal with Merrill Lynch, Marvel was not able to use any of the $525 million loan to produce Iron Man. Marvel had to take a chance. If they really wanted to kick off with Iron Man, they had to put up the cash themselves. They had to risk $140 million on Iron Man. Iron Man. There's no way, I said when it was announced, and as it turns out, they were right and I was wrong. With a budget of $140 million, Iron Man made over $585 million worldwide. It introduced Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, Agent Phil Coulson, the Avengers Initiative, and the post-credits sequence, which would become a staple of Marvel films and comic book movies in general. It won 4 Teen Choice Awards and MTV's coveted Best Summer Movie so far. It was followed by The Incredible Hulk that same year, which rebooted the Hulk from his cinematic appearance just 5 years before. It made $263 million against a budget of $150 million. Marvel Studios was 2 for 2. That, along with their plans for the rest of the shared universe going forward, was enough to convince Disney to acquire Marvel for just over $4 billion in its entirety, still on the rise. 2010 brought another Iron Man movie, which introduced Black Widow and War Machine. 2011, Thor, which also featured the debuts of Loki and Hawkeye. That same year, Captain America: The First Avenger was released, and the stage was finally set for the end of the first arc, the first finish line, the first official film under new ownership, The Avengers, in 2012. A movie that would bring together, for the first time ever, 4 franchises in a continuation of their stories, simultaneously ending the first arc and launching into the next. It was no longer a question of whether or not Marvel could create a successful shared cinematic universe over time. It was only a matter of how much money they were going to make in the process. From 2013 to 2017, Marvel Studios, under the umbrella of Disney, released 11 more films and moved into television with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as well as developing a smaller shared series on Netflix with Daredevil, Elektra, The Punisher, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage. As of this video, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has grossed nearly $15 million. Billion? $15 billion worldwide, with no signs of slowing down anytime soon. In 2018, Black Panther became the 3rd Marvel Cinematic Universe film to break into the top 10 highest-grossing films of all time worldwide, along with Avengers and Avengers: Age of Ultron. Black Panther is currently the 3rd highest-grossing domestic release of all time, behind only Star Wars: The Force Awakens and Avatar. There are no comparable franchises. Star Trek, Star Wars, James Bond, heck, Friday the 13th, Rocky. There are a lot of franchises that have churned out a lot of movies in sequence that are centered around a core concept, character, or group of characters. They may or may not be part of the same universe, the same timeline, the same reality from film to film, depending on the choices made on that production at that time. What Marvel accomplished had never been attempted before and will never be duplicated. 2018 is the 10-year anniversary of the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and with the release of Avengers: Infinity War, the culmination of everything that has been produced since 2008, since Iron Man, since the whole experiment began. It is a film that will have lasting repercussions for every writer, actor, producer, director, character, studio, and YouTube personality that has ever been associated with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is the end of this thing as we know it. It is the beginning of this thing as we will know it heading into the future. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe, share this video, check out our Patreon if you're in the position to help the channel grow at patreon.com/toygalaxy, and let us know in the comments below what your top 3 MCU films are. For me, it's gotta be Winter Soldier, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers, I think. There's a lot.
There's a lot.
They're good.
Yeah.